Bard on the Plains podcast with Mike McPeak. It's about stories, mine and yours.
I got my first episode into iTunes last week, and I took a sigh of relief. Then I realized I was going to have to record another one here. Well, I had somebody lined up, but he was busy helping other people do some farming, and thought, well, who else could I get? Well, I tried calling my neighbor next door because I figured she might be an interesting lady to talk to, but she wasn't home, so I thought, well, who else could I get? Well, I decided to drive downtown and see the barber down there. He's a friendly fellow and likes to talk. I figured I could probably get some interesting stuff out of him. Well, I drove down to his barber shop down there, and there was a sign on the door that said, "Gone to Rochester, hopefully for the last time." Well, it certainly sounded like a positive thing, but didn't help me any at the moment. Just at that moment, the guy in the shop next door to him came out. It was the tattoo parlor, and I'd heard some things about him. My daughter had helped him set up his shop this summer, but I've never really met the guy. And he said that he was a interesting guy, and I thought, well, what the heck, I'll see if he wanted to talk to me. I explained to him what I was doing, and I asked if he would do an interview with me, and he said, yeah, sure, that wouldn't be a problem. Now, I realize tattoo parlors aren't all that unusual, but for Clark, this one is a little different. Maybe I should explain a little bit about the town where I live first. Most of the people here are of Northern European descent, mostly Norwegians and Germans. I count myself amongst the Germans, although I'm only half German, and I like to kid the Norwegians about some of their culinary delights, as they call them. They have this dish called lutefisk, which is basically they take cod, store it in salt, cook it in lye until it's a gelatinous consistency, and then they pour enough butter on it to give a whale a heart attack, and they consider this something good to eat. I've always figured that lutefisk was something that my German ancestors sold a bunch of rotten fish to the Norwegians, and they decided to cook it anyway. I don't know who got the last laugh on that deal. The town is small, only about 1,200 people, and most of the people in this town have lived here all of their lives. So I probably quite literally related to half the people in this town. So we are a small, somewhat tight-knit group of people with kind of conservative ideas about things, and we're really not prone to openly expressing our feelings as long as you discount the few alcohol-fueled disagreements that may happen on a Saturday night. So now we have someone who can quite literally allow you to wear your feelings on your arm living in this community. I asked him how he came to be a tattoo artist, how he ended up in Clark, and what he thinks of this community. This is my interview with Josh Birrittier. Okay, why don't we start out? What's your name?
Josh.
Okay.
Nicholas Birrittier.
Okay.
It's Italian.
Oh, really? Not too many Italians in this part of the country, but
right.
So how long have you been a tattoo artist?
Well, I got my first tattoo machine in 2003. My mom wanted me to be a tattoo artist.
Okay.
She's a painter, and she said, why don't you quit skateboarding and all the other hooligan stuff I was doing at that point, and said, here, I'll get you into the field. And that's kind of where it took off. I started off as a cosmetic tattoo artist. I was tattooing makeup.
Oh, you mean like permanent eyebrows?
Yeah,
and
permanent eyeliner, lipstick, and it's usually older people who have allergies to makeup, or maybe people with cancer or anything that, so that's kind of where I had my big break into my industry.
Well, then why did you decide to go from there and into the more graphic tattoo field?
Different clientele. If you think about it, older people, like older women, they're kind of finicky. The younger crowd, you have a little bit more artistic freedom, and you're doing more artistic stuff.
Right.
And
tattooing is a artistic field. Do you draw? What's your kind of artistic talent that you bring to the tattoo?
I definitely learned a lot of the traditional techniques, everything from like Norman Rockwell stuff to Van Gogh, and you kind of take your own spin off of it once you get you can't, before you reinvent the wheel, you got to learn about the wheel. So that, and then after that, I still carry a lot of the traditional things that I learned through the years. But overall, yeah, you got to get into the art side of it. You got to draw. You got to, I specialize in certain techniques and things that in my genre of my background. So,
do you draw? I mean, beyond the tattooing, do you like draw, paint, anything, any specific kind of art, or just?
I do a lot of spit shading, which is what killed Norman Rockwell. It's where you eat the paint and then you pull it out.
And then you spit at the...
No, you eat the paint and then you put it on the brush, and it's like dry brushing. You put the paint and then you smear it with spit.
Okay.
And water. But it's a dying art, and the people who know how to do it won't tell you how to do it. So, like, what I know, I wouldn't teach to anybody unless they were here for a long time. Some things you keep your best, you keep your spades in your pockets. You know what I mean?
I've never heard of that technique before. Because I've always, like watercolor and oil paint, and I've never heard of that. And not that I'm an artist, but I've never heard of that technique before. So.
Yeah, it's hard to research. It's kind of, and then the people who do show you don't really know how to do it, or something along those lines. Like if you're willing to teach it so early on to somebody else that you don't really know, you probably don't know all of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're always learning, and so I do a lot of stuff that just kind of faded with time.
So how long have you actually been in the graphic tattooing business?
I didn't start taking it seriously until about 5 or 6 years ago, because I got a job in LA working for Neiman Marcus doing digitizing. So I would do a design, and then they would take it, digitize it, and then print it on a pair of boots and then sell them for like $500. So I worked for Kettle Black, UnusualThreads.com, Neiman Marcus, specialty stores. Like I made a leather rug for Aerosmith. I made a jacket for Usher. Heikloom, Seal, made a motorcycle seat for Paris Hilton, Sister, Nikki, and all them. Then I got out of that, and I really took tattooing seriously.
So now, did you train under someone
For tattooing?
You're right.
My first couple years I did. When I got into the cosmetic end, I worked with a lady named Terry Lively in Texas, and she sucked. She was really hard to deal with. And then all my buddies were artists, and then I got a job at in my area, that like a premier shop that was like, if you're gonna get work, you went there. Out of a 10 million people city, I worked in one of the best, hands down. And I was just doing cosmetic tattooing, and then I learned the other aspect of the art background, and cleaning, sterilization, the process of becoming a tattoo artist. That's where I learned the business side. I didn't learn tattooing in general. I learned what you got to do to get there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So how long did you stay in that shop?
A couple years. I was living out of my '59 Pontiac. I'm a rebel. I've always been a car guy. And at that time, I was really into hot rodding, and all my buddies were in car clubs. And I had a '59 Pontiac. I went through a breakup. So essentially, I got caught sleeping in the shop. And it was bad news. Like, hey, dude, you can't sleep in the shop. And through embarrassment and all that stuff. And the guy I worked for he had a really hard apprenticeship, so he kind of reflected that on me a lot, like what he expected from me, and we came to the end, and I parked my '59 Pontiac, and I left Texas altogether.
So then, did you travel around a bit before you came to Clark?
Well, that's kind of what led up to the whole working in LA, but I lived in Seattle before that, and I went from New Orleans to Seattle to LA, Oklahoma. I just did the trip, when you're single and you're young and you don't have anything to lose, what do? You just travel.
That's true.
So then I met a girl when I lived in Los Angeles, and her family was from Iowa. And then I made the journey, and we ended up breaking up, and she was psycho, and I left my good job in California and my nice house. I left everything, But I did it because I thought I had something worth more than material stuff. But I learned my lesson. You know, I kind of now everything's slowed down. You know, I'm older.
Yeah. So how did you finally end up coming to Clark here?
Well, I dated a girl in Sioux Falls. We got pregnant, and she really wanted to be near her family. So, high water, you know, we came out here and we made that transition, and you know, now I live here. I'm a gypsy, but I will always, I have to live here. You know what I mean? I have a kid. So for better or for worse,
Yeah.
I'm in the Clark community.
What do you think of Clark, considering that you've been in bigger places and more? Because Clark, for anybody who doesn't know, is a small town. And what do you think of this place compared to the other places that you've lived?
Don't do anything that you don't want anybody to know about, because the town's so small that if you you do something, everybody will know. So overall, it's a really small, knit, tight community. A lot of farmers. It's a lot different. Nobody's on the same pace as me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm like an alien compared to where I'm at. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Every day I try to adjust because, like, the community is, everybody knows everybody, and if somebody down the street, whatever. It's a pretty tight community. It's small. It's family. It's a very family place, and
well, yeah, having grown up around here, I can tell you I'm probably literally related to half the town. So it does make things interesting.
Right, and so overall, I think if you're from a big city, you come here to retire, maybe have a good family. I kind of came out here to from California with the idea in my head that I wouldn't be next to the border, I wouldn't be dealing with the crime, I wouldn't be dealing with diversity so much, and it's exactly what I thought it was going to be. It's small, it's quiet, a couple gas stations,
Yeah, so overall, it seems to be fitting you then?
Not me, but it'd fit the rest of the, I'd say 90% of the world would be pretty happy.
Okay.
I think for me, though, I'm a bit of a hellion,
March to your own drummer.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's okay, too, because, I mean, I'm not quite a rebel, but, I mean, I'm different. A lot of small towns in the Midwest, it's more like athletes and, sports.
Right.
And I'm not. I'm more of the nerd type. So.
Right, the intellectual.
Yeah.
The thinker.
Yeah, the guy that'll sit here and do a podcast. I think it's a good place for people. You do have freedom to be yourself.
Oh, yeah. There's room to grow. I would say, okay, realistically speaking, New York's $30 a square foot, whereas out here it's $3 a square foot. So if you're a businessman, this is the perfect place to develop a business. The Midwest is where it's at. If you got a big business that you want to make money and to grow, you have room here and options, and it's easier to start a business out here than it is in a big city,
So how has business been here because it is on the highway, and there's a lot of people that pass through on their way to like Sturgis and such. How has business been?
Well, my business is generally word of mouth. So, what I do is I do good work on somebody, and then they show somebody else, and then, you can't make everybody happy, but for the most part, my business is good.
Okay.
I mean, I just bought my second Harley, so that'll tell you.
How long have you been riding motorcycles then?
When I lived in California, I rode a bike. I lived in Texas, I rode a bike. I moved out here, I bought a bike. It's just a good form of transportation. But out here, I think that motorcycle riding is a little bit more serious because it's more of a brotherhood, because everybody in every area belongs to a club. It's kind of like the bike clubs out here are the same as a gang in L.A. And what I mean is every street has a gang. Out here, every town's got a motorcycle club.
Yeah, or all the motorcycle people know each other and they talk to each other.
Well, it's just a little bit more of a, and they're more willing to help you out, Like when I lived in L.A., all my neighbors were HAs, and that's pretty hardcore. And, they let me use their tools, but we never communicated. And out here, I go I can go to anybody's house that has a Harley in front of it, and they'll be like, "Hey, what's going on? I'm out of gas." "Oh, well, let me help you." You know what I mean?
So it's a different kind of vibe here.
Right.
And it's more, I've always thought the Midwest is a little bit more friendly? Accommodating, helpful.
Yeah, within reason.
Right.
Like, say you don't know everybody. You know what I mean? You got to know somebody, and then you meet the next person. Like, you kind of got to find your in. You know, and then whoever you socialize with will definitely nail your status to the wall in this town. You know.
So, in your course of doing tattoos, have you done any? Has there been any tattoos or anything that's really kind of stood out in your mind that kind of unusual or different or?
I out here, you're more likely to get more business if you were to schedule something out of a house. If you were to say, "Hey, I'm coming to an area where there's no tattooing," and say, "I'm going to do it in this guy's house," you're going to make your money. You know what I mean?
Right.
Having a legitimate shop, a lot of people out here are a little bit more frugal and are willing to get work from somebody or anybody who says, "I'm good." You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, like, essentially out here, you, tattoo-wise, you really don't need a shop or anything. You just need somebody who's got a lot of friends.
Has there been any these designs that really stood out in your mind? Anything that was really different or?
Well, I would say that the majority of my clientele is women. So 80% of my business is ladies, and then the other 20% are men. And back then it was flip-flopped, and over time things have changed. And where I'm at, the only tattoos that really stand out to me is I do a lot of like firefighter stuff, or Sioux Falls, I do a lot of cops. Every area you're going to get different clientele, and you're going to get different wacky tattoos. I do a lot of motorcycle club stuff for certain clubs, because you have to get permission. So out here, generally, I just know, like, all the tattoos are, they're common tattoos. I mean, I do a lot of, reapers, and then I do a lot of flowers and stars. You don't really get too any eccentric out here. In the bigger cities, everybody's looking to trump one another, so they're looking to do the next craziest, big, weird thing. But out here, it's all the same. I mean, I do for instance, I went out to the Hog Wild Rodeo, and I tattooed out in Iowa at a bike club deal, and it was all right. I did a lot of like clovers and stuff like that. But in my area, there's nothing too wacky out here to do. I mean, I get more stuff in barter. Like, I got my dog in trade for a tattoo.
Okay, that's a little strange. Any other kind of weird? Have bartered anybody bartered with you to get a tattoo, or was that the?
I barter all the time.
Okay.
Like, if it's a big piece, like I just got a 4x4 Chevy small box in trade for probably 15 hours worth of work, and then I sold it. Everything you see, this chair I'm sitting on, I got in tattoo trade. The bear skulls, the boar skulls, my elk skin rug, my paintings. I'd say everything you see is pretty close to tattoo trade. Everything I own has been through tattooing.
So after all these years, you still like the business then? Or?
Yeah, I think the better you get, the further away from people you get. You ever read Dorian Gray?
The Portrait of Dorian Gray? Yep.
Yes,
yep.
Right. Oscar Wilde, he's like my favorite writer. Well, he said, in the beginning of the book, he's talking to the painter, and he says, "Why are you so eager to throw your career away? This is your best work. Why wouldn't you show it?" Well, because people can't relate to it, or they don't understand it, or how much work it took you to do. So the better I've gotten, the further away from people I've gotten. I've become more of a recluse. Like, I lock my door most of the time. You have to schedule with me. I just got my life going. I've sacrificed my own life to develop my skill. So whatever you do, like, for instance, I know some famous guys in a band, and they stayed on my floor. And one of the guys, he said, Yeah, I mean, if you can do anything in your life, like touring and being in a band, it takes you about 4 years before you get noticed. So I've always lived by that rule. Like, whatever you do in your life, you have to dedicate 4 years of it to better yourself, to better what you're going to do and what you're doing, before you get anywhere. So 4 years of whatever you do in your life, you have to dedicate 4 years to it. So, I mean, if you're going to take something serious, if you're really going to make the commitment, then at least give it 4 years. You can't. So with tattooing, it's consumed me, and I've gotten further away from my clients and locked my door and spend more time painting. And I got out of art, and I'm more into poetry now, I've bought every art book under the sun, so what do you do after you've looked at everything 100 times?
Okay.
You look for other outlets, and right now I'm really into poetry.
Okay. Now, the name of your studio is Gypsy Gold Gallery. How did you come up with that one?
Bag of change.
Okay.
It was me and my buddy came up from Texas to help me set up, and he drove out, and he said he named it. I didn't name it. He named it. So it's kind of cool because if you don't have some type of fabrication or some type of an anchor or a base to relate to, so I'll never change the shop name because it was like a gift. Even though it was a name, it was like, hey. So I'm more of an item person. Like, I like to collect things or memories. So essentially, the name came about through somebody else. So no matter what I do or where I go, I'll probably keep the same name. Because I've had a few shops before this, and I just use names like paper cups and I throw them away. But this one, it means a little bit more. So you have to.
And it's something you'll probably be known by
Right.
wherever you go, kind of like being a Rembrandt or a Picasso.
Right.
It'll be equated with you.
Yeah, Rembrandt's one of my favorite artists. He's good.
Now I see. Now, how you have tattoos?
Right.
How many years has it taken you to acquire them?
I'm 33 now, and I've just collected tattoos as I've gone. Most of them are gifts, like the rose on my hand with the eye in it. I got this one in a shootout in Texas, and I saved my boss's life. This one I got after a fist fight at a church. I mean, this one was an initiation piece. Like, all the tattoos are, my dad died, I got a letter in the mail, so it's Dear John. One of my bad breakups, I got this one, and this is a Texas piece. Every time I go to a big city, I get a tattoo from somebody I like out there, and like the one on my leg, I have a tiger head, and it says Chicago 2010. Like, wherever I'm at, if I want to get tattooed by somebody I know, I usually get the date, or it's a memory piece. So they're just anchors in time. I mean, you might grow and change, but over the years, you'll never forget that time.
What was your first tattoo that you got?
I was 17, and I'll try to keep it PG-13. I was in a crew, and all my friends were out of prison, and my first tattoo was an iron bird from shoulder to shoulder. So my whole back's covered with.
So your first one was a big one, then?
Yeah, and it was through a group of guys. It was that point in my life when I was young.
Okay, so it was kind of an initiation.
Right, you'll remember them, you'll forget them, and no matter what happens, they'll stick with you. So some you'll regret. Usually, I think most people regret their first tattoo. I think your first tattoo is going to be your worst tattoo. My first tattoo I got, and by the time I was in college, I never took my shirt off ever in public or swimming or anything.
So where would you like to see your business, a few years down the road?
Well, I got a 2-year plan. I got a 10-year plan. My 2-year plan is my credit. Right now, I've built my credit up really good, which is ludicrous for me to even have credit because I pay for everything in cash. Nobody really knows what kind of money I make, and I don't tell people because it's nobody's business. You know what I mean?
True.
But I would say that in 2 years, I'll be able to pick a building, and in 10 years, I'll own a building. So I've kind of shifted gears. Like, I've gotten away from, tattooing's great, but it's not a retirement plan. If your hands don't work, you got bad eyesight, something goes wrong, there's no retirement, there's no health care, there's nothing in it. So I'm trying to get my business into a position where I'm making money whether I work or not.
Okay.
And I'm not depending on employees, so maybe something a little bit more like licensing or something along those lines. So if you think about it, whatever you do, if you can set it up where you have income coming in with minimal work, you're gold. You know what I mean?
You think you'll stay here, or do you think you'll
Yeah, I have a
move on
kid
down?
here.
Okay.
If not, I would be in Italy. That was my goal, was to go to Italy. I was
Okay.
going to go and be an American artist in a foreign country. So, yeah, I figure the next couple of years I'll own a building out here. Or in Webster, close.
Okay. But it will be in this area then?
Yeah, essentially.
So this place has kind of grown on you then?
I think my kid has.
Okay.
You're willing to give or sacrifice anything for your family. And that's kind of where I'm at. I think a lot of people in this area love being here. And for me, you got to think I'm the black sheep of my area because we rumble motorcycles all night and I smoke outside the door. And, I definitely, my business is a lot different than other people's businesses, We're tattoo artists, we're artists.
If you have a story you'd like to tell, contact Mike on Twitter @BardOnThePlains or by email at bardontheplains@gmail.com. For more information about the stories in this podcast, visit bardontheplains.com.